Hello, I'm Marina. I'm from Barcelona and I participated in the project Never Forget What Happened in Sachsenhausen in the summer of 2020. As you will see, there is a memorial plaque in Sachsenhausen memorial site dedicated to Spanish prisoners who ended up in the concentration camp. However, this plaque doesn't take into consideration that most of the prisoners who ended up there from Spain were Republicans. Between 1936 and 1939, a lot of Spanish Republicans had to go into exile after they lost war. This plaque was put there by the Kingdom of Spain. My intervention wanted to complete the explanation that these prisoners were Republicans and had nowhere to go back to after they had to leave their country because of the war. And they ended up in a concentration camp in a foreign country where they were seen as prisoners, and where this commemoration plaque also only explains that they are prisoners, but not the history behind why they ended up there. So it is important for me to make an important focus on this part of their history. Okay. Before participating in the project and visiting the memorial site, I had never asked myself questions like, what is remembrance, or why is it important, or why should we care to have remembrance in our lives? So, this project not only made me consider it, but also be critical about it. So now when I stumble across some statue or an artistic intervention in a city which I'm visiting, I try to understand what this memorial is explaining, but also who explains the story behind the memorial, who is deciding what is told and what isn't, and try to understand a bigger picture of what actually happened and what is remembered. In particular, I have become more interested in following the stories of some Spanish Republican poets after or during the Civil War. For instance, this summer I visited the hometown of Miguel Hernández, one really famous Spanish poet, which is known by his poetry, especially during the times of war. In his town, I found different memorial sites which had different ideas about him or about his ideology, and I have considered that I'm more critical after participating in the project, which, for instance, in this picture, in which we can see Miguel Hernández wrote about Stalin, praising his work, and perhaps nowadays, or having more information as we do about what actually happened, we can read in a different way. Or, in the other hand, I also visited the graveyard of Antonio Machado, who died in the south of France after escaping from Spain. And there we can find several memorials that have been made by people, like Spanish still Republicans who visit this graveyard and bring flowers or poetry to him, remembering him in a different way, perhaps more personal and sweet. And it has made me reflect too about who are these people that come visit him, or what are the hopes of these people. And yes, it's important for me to understand also the context of the country I live in, or how present this conflict still is in my daily life. So it is important for me to remember or to reflect about how we remember. On the other hand, for instance, in some Spanish streets, we can still find plaques with the names of the streets, which are still from the Franco era. So they still have the political party symbol, and which has made me reflect on whether who is keeping these plaques still there, or whether they should or not be there. And with this and many other stuff that's still present from this conflict. So from Sachsenhausen, I learned about what happened there in World War II, but I think that what I learned the most was to question what I see in my day-to-day life, in the streets, in the forms of art, and how different things that have happened are remembered in different places, and what it tells me about how the situation is still there.